You want the exact amount, you get the exact amount. When I was 13 or 14, I decided I wanted a PS3. My dad refused to buy me one, but my uncle made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He said that if I worked at his sweets shop for the 2 months of summer break, he would buy me a PS3 and some games in lieu of payment. For teenage me with no commitments, this seemed fantastic. My uncle sold a kind of specialty snack known as a mini samosa in his shop. They are like samosas, but smaller, about 3.5 to 4 centimeters in size. About 1/2286th a football field for my American friends. They were sold by weight, in sealed packs of 250 grams and 500 grams, as these were the most common amounts people bought. Making those packages turned out to be my job. You see, sometime between now and when Uncle started his business, he realized that 250 grams was roughly the weight of 28 mini samosas, and thus 56 were 500 grams. So instead of weighing each packet, I was told to just pack by counting individual items, which was easier and saved time. We also sold them individually for people who wanted larger, smaller or unusual amounts. This was also around the time when our government started airing customer awareness PSAs. Basically, just telling customers to beware of fraudulent business people. This is relevant. So, one particularly hot afternoon, it was just me and my uncle at the shop. In India, frequent power cuts were very common during summers, and thus there were no fans or AC running. Both tempers and temperatures were running high at the shop that day. It was then that the villain of our story, Mr. Karen, made his entry. He was a local resident and a regular. He seemed angry from the onset when he barged into the shop. He took a look at the fans and saw that they weren't running, then angrily picked up a 500-gram pack of samosas and asked, "How many samosas are in this thing?" "That's 500 grams, I said. I said how many, not how much. Mr. Karen literally screamed, again, "How many in this?" 56, I replied immediately, since, you know, I packed them. "How can you be so sure? You didn't even count. You're trying to cheat me?" Mr. Karen was now in full-scale Karen mode. "I demand you pack me 500 grams of those individual ones, and don't you dare cheat me again." I looked over at my uncle, wet with sweat, fanning himself with yesterday's newspaper. He slowly nodded. I beamed a huge smile, "Sure, sir. Whatever you want." So, I took a bag, picked up some samosas and started putting them on the balance. I kept counting samosas as I put them in until they were a little over 500 grams. Then I removed the last samosa and the weight fell below 500. Now, keeping eye contact with Mr. Karen, I crushed the samosa and started putting its powdery remains in the bag until it was exactly 500 grams. But wait, there's more. Mr. Karen apparently didn't seem to mind powdered samosa, but instead asked smugly, "So how many samosas now?" 48, I claimed triumphantly. You see, sometime in the past, my uncle's old chef retired and the new chef made samosas with a little bit more filling in them. They looked the same size on the outside and only weighed a couple grams more each, and since he made them in bulk and also sold to other shops in the area, the price wasn't too much of an issue. So my uncle let it slide. But those couple grams added up on mass orders, and that is what Mr. Karen found out the hard way. He looked sheepishly at the pre-packed samosas and then at his own package and asked if he could buy the former instead. "No, my nephew made a package specially for you, at your own request. So that is what you have to buy." My uncle finally spoke. Mr. Karen silently took his pack, paid and left. He was a lot more respectful during his subsequent visits. I was reminded of this story yesterday when my PS3 finally died. As evident, English is not my first language. In fact, it's not even my third. So please excuse any mistakes. Now to the comments. The tone you use and the recipe included at the end makes this weirdly heartwarming. Good storytelling. OP replied, "Thanks. You're very kind. And your English is excellent." Mr. Karen got more than just samosas that day, he got a serving of humble pie as well. At least the humble pie was free. No, it wasn't free. It was 6 samosas worth of humble pie. Actually, a little over 7 samosas, 7 plus a little bit of the crumbled one. Good story. Your English was perfectly understandable and clear. OP replied, "Thank you. Actually, your English is better than a lot of native speakers in the US. Significantly better. Had the content not tipped us off, we wouldn't have known." The standard US size measure, football field, was a delightful abuse of those here who are clueless about the metric system. Jesus Christ, you just made me read one of those "here's a story, now here's the recipe," didn't you? OP replied, "I figured some might want to try them out. They're delicious and easy to make. I'm honestly okay with it here. I got my story and a free recipe. Must be good samosas if he kept coming back." "Good story, thank you." OP replied, "Uncle sells almost every type of Indian sweetened snack. From rasgullas to samosas to even dosas now. Come for the samosa, stay for the chai, I used to say." About 2286. The football field for my American friends. Brilliant. Good story. I read that and instantly knew exactly how big they were, since he used American measurements. Lol. OP replied, "I'm nothing if not inclusive, lol. Your English is as excellent as this story. Love it. Feels wholesome." OP replied, "Thank you so much." This post, the comments and especially OP's responses are an absolute delight to read. OP replied, "Thank you for reading everything." So, the real question I have is how many and which languages do you speak? 'Cause if this isn't even your third language, this is pretty impressive. OP replied, "My first language is Assamese, from Assam, a northeastern Indian state. But I spent my early years in another state because of my father's job, so I learned Bengali, then Hindi because everyone in India knows Hindi. I studied at a convent school, so I learned English there." Wow, that's impressive. I have heard of Assam because you do excellent tea. I didn't know it had its own distinct language though. That's pretty cool. Always think it's cool when people can wrap their head around so many different languages. Hey man, sorry to hear about your PS3. Mine died a year ago, but I got it to run again by replacing the thermal paste. Lousy Sony not engineering thermal paste that's good for 15 years. OP replied, "This is actually helpful advice. I might try that later. Thanks." If that doesn't work, someone out there will buy it to repair and love it. About 2286. The football field for my American friends. You, my friend, have won. Well played. Danged well played.